All right, welcome back to Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be tackling something pretty revolutionary, maybe even a little bit mysterious.
Yeah.
Blockchain. You've probably heard the buzz, but today we're going to go beyond the hype to understand how this tech could actually, reshape the world.
Yeah, it's true. Blockchain gets thrown around a lot these days, but it's not just a buzzword, right? We're talking about faster transactions, ironclad security, even rethinking how we vote or prove our identities online.
Yeah, okay, so let's unpack this a little bit.
Okay. Sometimes simplifying complex ideas can help you reveal those core concepts, right?
Totally. It's like building a strong foundation before we add all the advanced layers.
Exactly.
So using this playful approach as a springboard.
Okay.
Let's just start with the fundamental question.
Right.
What is blockchain?
Yeah, so the source uses this analogy of a shared notebook, which I think is a good place to start.
Okay.
Imagine, a digital notebook that anyone can write in. But, and here's the catch, once something's written, it can never be erased or changed.
So like a permanent, unalterable record of transactions, agreements, anything really.
Precisely. Now imagine this notebook isn't kept in just one place, but it's distributed across a whole network of computers. No single entity controls it. That's the beauty of decentralization.
So wait, no one person can manipulate the information.
Right.
That's a huge deal when you think about things like financial records, election results.
Absolutely. And to add another layer of security, each entry in this notebook, we call them blocks, is linked to the previous one with a unique code called a hash. Think of it like a fingerprint that makes each block tamper-proof.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all fits together. We have these blocks, each containing data, linked together in a chain. But this is where I need a bit more detail. What's in these blocks? And how does that translate to real-world use?
Good question. So a block can contain practically any type of data, a financial transaction, a medical record, proof of ownership for a digital asset like an NFT. The possibilities are vast.
Hold on, NFTs. Let's back up for a second.
Sure.
You mentioned NFTs. How do they fit into all of this?
Yeah. NFTs are a perfect example of how blockchain can prove ownership in the digital world. They're unique digital tokens that represent ownership of something, a piece of digital art, a collectible, even virtual real estate.
So it's like having a digital certificate of authenticity.
Right.
And because it's on the blockchain, it can't be forged or duplicated.
That's the idea, and this concept of verifiable ownership enabled by blockchain has massive implications across a range of industries.
This is getting really interesting, but before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's go back to the basics of how blockchain works. We've talked about decentralization, but how does the network actually agree on what gets added to the chain?
Yeah, so that's where things get a little more technical, and we move beyond the simplified analogies. There are different mechanisms for achieving consensus, like proof of work. That's the system Bitcoin uses. And then there's proof of stake, which is considered more energy efficient.
Wait, energy efficient. Is blockchain's energy consumption a concern?
It can be, particularly with those proof of work systems. This is something to keep in mind. As blockchain adoption grows, we need to be mindful of its environmental impact.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got these different types of blockchains with varying ways of reaching consensus. This is already more complex than I initially thought.
Yeah, and we're just scratching the surface.
Oh, wow.
But understanding these fundamentals is key to grasping blockchain's potential across these various industries.
All right, so we've laid the groundwork. Now let's talk about the real-world impact. The source mentions blockchain being used in everything from banking to healthcare to voting. How does this technology actually play out in practice?
Let's start with banking, as it's one of the most talked about applications. Right now, when you make a transaction, you rely on a bank as an intermediary, right? Blockchain allows for peer-to-peer transactions, cutting out the middleman.
So faster, potentially cheaper transactions.
Yeah.
That's a pretty compelling argument. But wouldn't that disrupt entire industries built around those middlemen?
It certainly raises questions about how traditional financial institutions will adapt to this new landscape. This is where the discussion about blockchain's wider societal impact gets really interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely not just about the tech itself. It's about the ripple effects it creates. But before we dive into the wider societal shifts, let's stick with the practical applications for a bit. What other industries are seeing real change thanks to blockchain?
Well, supply chains are a great example.
Okay.
Imagine being able to track a product's entire journey from raw materials to your doorstep with complete transparency.
So if I'm buying like a cup of coffee,
right,
I could theoretically see where those beans were grown, who processed them, like every step along the way.
Exactly. That level of traceability has huge implications for food safety, ethical sourcing, even combating counterfeit goods. You can be sure that what you're buying is authentic and meets certain standards.
That's pretty powerful for consumers.
Yeah.
What about applications in healthcare?
Sure.
I've heard a lot about blockchain and medical records.
Yeah, it's one of the most promising areas. Imagine your medical records being securely stored on a blockchain, accessible only with your permission. No more worrying about data breaches or unauthorized access.
That would be a game changer for patient privacy. But wouldn't that also make it harder for healthcare providers to share information when needed?
That's where things get interesting.
Blockchain
allows for controlled, secure sharing. You could grant, like, temporary access to specific parts of your record for a doctor's visit, for example. It gives patients more control over their own data.
I can see how that would address a lot of the concerns around privacy and security. Our source material also mentioned blockchain's potential in government and voting. That seems like a really high stakes area.
It is. Imagine a system where votes are recorded on a blockchain, making it virtually impossible to tamper with results. That could increase trust in elections, especially in places where there have been concerns about fraud or manipulation.
It sounds almost too good to be true. Are there any downsides to using blockchain for something like voting?
Well, it's not a silver bullet, There are still technical challenges to address, and you'd need widespread adoption and trust in the system for it to be truly effective. Plus, we have to be careful about issues of access and digital literacy. Not everyone has equal access to technology.
That's a really important point. It's easy to get caught up in the hype of new technology. But we have to consider the potential downsides and unintended consequences as well.
Absolutely. Technology is a tool, and it's up to us to use it responsibly and ethically.
So we've seen how blockchain can be applied in a wide range of industries. But let's shift gears a bit. What about the broader impact on society?
Sure.
How is this technology shaping the way we interact, work, and even think about value?
Well, one of the key shifts is this idea of decentralization, which we've touched on throughout our conversation. Blockchain removes the need for intermediaries.
How this technology could reshape the power dynamics in various industries and even in society as a whole. It's a bit daunting, but also incredibly exciting to think about.
It certainly is, and it brings up a lot of questions, How do we regulate a decentralized system? Who is responsible when things go wrong? These are the kinds of conversations we need to be having as blockchain adoption grows.
Absolutely. We're just at the beginning of this technological revolution. And it's important to be mindful of the ethical and societal implications as we navigate this new landscape.
Couldn't agree more. And it's not just about the potential downsides. There are also incredible opportunities for positive change.
Like what? Give us some of the more optimistic scenarios.
Well, imagine blockchain being used to create more transparent and equitable supply chains. Ensuring fair wages and working conditions for producers around the world. Or think about its potential in developing countries, where access to traditional banking systems is limited.
So blockchain could potentially empower individuals and communities in ways we haven't even thought of yet.
That's the exciting part. The possibilities are vast, and we're only just beginning to explore them.
Speaking of exploring possibilities, our source material hinted at some really intriguing concepts. Digital IDs and smart contracts. Can you break those down for us?
Sure. Let's start with digital IDs. Imagine being able to verify your identity online without having to share your social security number or other sensitive information. Blockchain can enable secure, verifiable digital identities that give individuals more control over their data.
That would be a huge step forward in terms of online privacy and security.
Absolutely.
No more worrying about your personal information being compromised in a data breach.
Exactly. And it could streamline so many processes from opening bank accounts to voting online.
Wow. Okay.
Now let's talk about smart contracts.
Okay.
They're essentially self-executing contracts that are stored and enforced on a blockchain.
Okay, that sounds a bit like science fiction.
Yeah.
How would a smart contract work in practice?
Let's say you're renting an apartment.
Okay.
The lease agreement could be coded into a smart contract on a blockchain. Once the agreed upon conditions are met,
right,
rent payment being received, the smart contract automatically releases the keys to the apartment.
So it automates the process and removes the need for a third party to manage the agreement.
Precisely. This could revolutionize industries like real estate, supply chain management, even legal services, making transactions more efficient, transparent, and secure.
It's incredible to think about how this technology could reshape the way we interact and do business. But I have to ask, are there any risks associated with smart contracts?
Right.
What happens if there's an error in the code?
Right.
Or someone tries to exploit a vulnerability?
That's a valid concern because smart contracts are code-based.
Right.
They're susceptible to bugs and vulnerabilities.
Right.
And because they're self-executing, any errors could have real-world consequences.
So it's crucial to have robust security measures.
Absolutely.
And thorough testing before deploying smart contracts in real-world scenarios.
Absolutely. And it's important to have legal frameworks in place to address disputes or issues that may arise from smart contract transactions.
It seems like with any powerful technology, there's a balance to strike between innovation and responsible implementation.
Exactly. And that's where the conversation about blockchain ethics and governance becomes so important.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
From the basics of blockchain technology to its potential applications and broader societal implications. But I'm still curious about something we touched on earlier.
Okay.
The question of whether blockchain can be hacked.
That's a question that's often on people's minds, especially with all the hype around blockchain security.
So is it truly hack-proof?
Well, no system is completely invulnerable, but blockchain is designed to be incredibly resilient. Remember, its decentralized nature means there's no single point of failure.
So instead of attacking a central